A good example of this is, again, Bhagavad Gita, where in the first chapter, Prabhupada speaks about Arjuna having the right, so to speak, to attack and kill his aggressors. But Arjuna wants to choose a higher role of forgiveness because the consequence of killing them is not good. And so this is another example of a moral tension. Is this making sense to you? Can you understand? So then another example of a moral tension is the tension between justice and mercy, or justice and forgiveness. So that's the particular moral tension that these discussions we're choosing to speak from this particular angle of vision. The moral tension between justice and mercy, particularly context of Vaisnava relationships. So within the Vaishnava relationship, sometimes there's a perception of some wrongdoing or some injustice. And we know in our conditioned state that sense of being wronged or having something unjust happen to you tends to swallow up our consciousness, so much so that we lose our Krishna consciousness. But we see in the Bhagavatam the example of great souls being accosted in many horrendous ways, and yet they're choosing to forgive their transgressors rather than act against them. The idea of the discussion is to examine the content to get some insight into. This is agitating. We're able to in the higher road of forgiveness of their transgressors, and how that might help us also in our dealings with one another, where inevitably as conditioned souls there's mistakes made within relationships, and therefore there's always going to be a sense of somehow being wronged or some injustice, some unfairness being perceived. And how can our association with the Bhagavatam to that's just road of forgiveness. Did I explain it? Well, we did part today. Part 2 is today. We have 4 speakers. So we request everyone to come up.
Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari, Jaya Girivaradhari, Jaya Yashodanandana, Jaya Vrajajana Ranjana, Jaya Vrajajana Ranjana, Jaya Yashodanandana, Jaya Vrajajana Ranjana, Jaya Vrajajana Ranjana, Jaya Jamuna Tiravanachari, Jaya Kunja Bihari, 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 Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Kishore Kishori, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Gurudeva, 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 Jaya Gurudeva.
Jai Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Ummilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Roma Pada Swamin Iti Namine. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatyade Satarine. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhu vyaevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. I'm lucky that Guru Maharaj is still not here. It's a very deep subject matter, like everybody else expressed. And I like to bring some ideas and thoughts that I have on the theme, and also complement the things that were discussed yesterday by the devotees who made the presentations, and also share some experiential something of my experience with the topic itself. When thinking of justice, this word justice is a principle that is meant to uphold law, the law. And it actually is meant for human society. Justice is meant for human society, for the human beings. And in the material world, this principle of justice it depends, or is relative to the particular culture in which it's applied. So therefore, in this material world, justice becomes a source of conflict between different cultures, because the different ideas that are there. So we hear, groups of people rising up and fighting against injustice, and by doing this, they actually just destroy, towns, and destroy families and life, kill. So it's a very confusing, and it's a great source of calamity and distress, this application of justice in the material world. However, justice is supposed to regulate and uphold, law in human society. As devotees, we understand and we know what the problem is. The problem is that there is ignorance on the laws that are given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Bhagavatam, we come to know, or is explained, that the law or the codes of conduct for human beings is only given by the Personality of Godhead. Dharman tu shakshat Bhagavan pranitam. That the cause the codes of conduct are given by God, and ignorance on these codes of conduct is the sword of all difficulties in this material world. So, so this word dharma are the codes and the laws that are given by the Lord in order to regulate and sort of have the whole human society being progressive and to be able to live in harmony like that. So justice means that the implication of justice is that there is this award and there is this punishment when there is a failure on following the law, or actually if you follow the law, if you follow the principles of Dharma. So for those who follow the principles of Dharma, they are awarded. And for those who break the principles of Dharma, they're punished. And there's a whole universal system that takes care of this. So these principles of justice is meant for just a common man, like that. However, in the Bhagavad Gita, we learn that Krishna tells us that if we embrace or we adopt this supreme principle of Dharma, and that there's this one principle of Dharma that actually will override all other codes or how you say, other principles of Dharma. There's this very supreme one. Krishna tells, you take this one, and then you don't have to worry. The famous verse, Sarva Dharman Parityaja Man Ekam Shanam Braja. Just take to this principle of Dharma, the supreme principle of Dharma, and then don't have to worry. Don't have to worry if we actually, by taking into this principle, neglect some of the other ones. Don't have to worry about the reactions. You will be taking care. This whole thing of being awarded and punished is, we understand that as a law of karma, the law of action and reaction. And however it is, if you're awarded or you're punished, that bounds us to this material world. So what we call karma bandhana. When you take up to the process that Krishna gives us, this process that Krishna gives us is a process of devotional service. In the process of devotional service, we become free from this karma bandhana. And how exactly that works, then we can understand that as Krishna's mercy. He has that prerogative. So, from the outside view, we can see that this application of justice and Krishna's mercy may seem the same, but actually, for the devotee, it is an amazing situation that one can only feel grateful about it, because it's an special arrangement that is being given. It's mercy. So we understand that if we actually become Krishna's devotee, then we hear that many times, that Krishna will personally take care of us. And that's what he said. He promised that. Ma suchaha, you do not worry. I will take care of you. I will take care. So that is Krishna's mercy. However, when we see the different, all the different stories, all the different pastimes that are there of Krishna's devotees, And sometimes, when, like Jai Jagannath Prabhu was saying, there is this apparent conflicts that are there. That, well, how has this happened? How is that, why this saintly devotee is being put in this situation, that's so terrible situation? I don't know, I'm thinking about it. Haridas Thakur. I mean, one can imagine that the Lord would allow such a saintly devotee like Haridas Thakur to be taken into that horrible punishment that the Muslim king was, applying on him, beating him in 21 marketplace in order to kill him. So, this type of things, from the outside perspective, it may seem, well, he's been punished. And nothing happens without the control of Krishna. Nothing happens without the control of God. So, how is this? So it's very mysterious, and it's very puzzling for the uneducated or the ignorant, how to explain that these things happens to devotees. We hear that famous is being quoted so many times, why bad things happens to good people type of thing. It becomes a great it becomes very puzzling for the uneducated to understand this. So, but for the devotee is not. For the devotee is, they have, Krishna Archana was saying yesterday in her presentation, that the devotee, he feels completely trusted and secure in Krishna's protection. Krishna makes that promise, and that relationship is there, so the devotee always sees Krishna's hand. So Krishna's hand is behind all these things, so it is absolutely good. And the advanced devotee understand that with no problem. So there's always this sense of gratitude that you've been taken care by Krishna. So that is the reality. That is a spiritual reality. And so in our case, okay, those are the pure devotees. Those are who are fully surrendered, exclusively surrendered to Krishna. Those who are able to abandon everything and exclusively surrender to Krishna. Now, I cannot say that about myself necessarily. I cannot say I'm trying. I'm in the process of trying to come to that stage. So how I'm going to be able to be in the position of being fully protected by Krishna? Krishna qualifies it. There's a specific qualification. Mam eka, exclusively me. If I'm still holding some shelters, material shelters, then that's not exclusively. So, is it count for me? Can I be under Krishna's protection? The answer is yes. I'm under Krishna's protection, and at least the way I understand it is that once, by the grace of Guru and Krishna, I'm become connected to Krishna, to Krishna's family. Usually, when we say now, what is your gotra? What is your family? What is your lineage? We say, I'm Achyuta gotra. I'm part of Krishna's family. I'm getting short of time. So because I'm connected to Krishna, then naturally, I be protected by him. So I'm under his protection. So, and in one sense, I've seen it this way. I'm seeing that because by the grace of my spiritual master, because I've been under his protection, then naturally Krishna takes me under his protection. And just like I'm thinking on the pastime of what is the name? One of Lord Chaitanya's associate who had a dog, Shivananda Shain. Shivananda saying somehow or other a dog became dear to Shivananda Shain. In general, dogs are not very sort of favored by the devotee community, but somehow or other this dog became dear to Shivananda Shain, and at the end, this dog received the favor of Lord Chaitanya and the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, and he was able to go back home, back to Godhead. So similarly, somehow or other, if I become dear to a dear devotee of Krishna, then naturally I will receive Krishna's mercy. So we can count on that. It's just part of it. So that is our spiritual reality. And I always remember my Guru Maharaj, he presents, he made the point of when we become afflicted by some material condition, we have to step back and reconnect to our spiritual reality. Our spiritual reality is we are under the mercy of Krishna. So everything that happens to us is Krishna's mercy. And behind everything that happens to us, there is Krishna's instruction. So it's very wonderful to always try to, okay, what is Krishna's instruction here? So just to wrap it, because I think I'm actually run out of time, how this principle applies to me within the community of Vaishnavas and the relationship that I have with Vaishnavas. And this situation of sometimes being on the on the ending side of an injustice or mistreatment, or maybe I am mistreating or having an injustice for someone else. So how that applies to these talks that I just presented is that as long as we bring, material conceptions to the relationships, the devotee relationships, that is going to cause all kinds of conflicts like that. It's a natural thing that's going to happen. As long as there's material conceptions, there is going to be conflict. So therefore, I'm going to be offended, I'm going to offend someone, or I will feel happy. I feel happy when I feel appreciated. And I appreciate someone else, and then we appreciate together, and then things are very nice. But, sometimes things are different, and then it becomes the conflict. So then what happened? Then I have to come back. I have to reconnect to my spiritual reality and be able to see things from the perspective of Krishna's mercy. So, justice and Krishna's mercy. For what I understand, if you're going to be functioning on your material, on the material level, then you have to deal with justice, awards and rewards, awards and punishment, and your ideas of what is right and what is wrong, what is just and what is, unfair. So, and from the perspective of your spiritual reality, Krishna's mercy, then is just Krishna's hand for the purpose of purifying. It's all good. So, from the perspective of Krishna's mercy, there is no necessity even to forgive. It's just gratitude. I'm grateful. I'm grateful because this devotee is being simply an instrument of Krishna for delivering this lesson. So I'm out of time. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। I'd like to read from Canto 4, Chapter 19, verse number 2. I'll just read the translation and the purport. When the most powerful Indra, the king of heaven, saw this, that this is essentially King Prthu's performance of sacrifices. When the most powerful Indra, the king of heaven, saw this, he considered the fact that King Prthu was going to exceed him in fruitive activities. Thus Indra could not tolerate the great sacrificial ceremonies performed by King Prthu. Purport. In the material world, everyone who comes to enjoy himself or lord it over material nature is envious of others. This envy is also found in the personality of the King of Heaven, Indra. As evident from revealed scriptures, Indra was several times envious of many persons. He was especially envious of great fruitive activities and the execution of yoga practices or siddhis. Indeed, he could not tolerate them and he desired to break them up. He was envious due to fear that those who performed great sacrifices for the execution of mystic yoga might occupy his seat. Since no one in this material world can tolerate another's advancement, everyone in the material world is called Matsara or envious. In the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is therefore said that Srimad Bhagavatam is meant for those who are completely nirmatsara or non-envious. In other words, one who is not free from the contamination of envy cannot advance in Krishna consciousness. In Krishna consciousness, however, if someone excels another person, the devotee who is excelled thinks how fortunate the other person is to be advancing in devotional service. Such non-envy is typical of Vaikuntha. However, when one is envious of his competitor, that is material, the demigods posted in the material world are not exempt from envy. I'd like to take the blessings of my spiritual master and all the assembled Vaishnavas to speak something on this wonderful subject for my own purification. So the scene here is that King Prthu was on the way to perform 100 Ashwamedha Yagyas, or sacrifices, for the benefit of the citizens. He was not thinking that Indra is known as Shatakratu, or he has performed 100 sacrifices and therefore I should beat him and therefore I have to perform these. But he was really thinking about the welfare of the citizens, because as most of us know that he was empowered incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, particularly empowered in the domain of Palana Shakti, or taking care of the citizens. And therefore he was really, from his heart, thinking about the welfare of everyone. So although like his intention was very much for the welfare of others, but King Indra could not tolerate, because he was thinking that he might come to the status of really taking away my own kingdom, because he would be more qualified than me. So because of not being able to tolerate, he wanted to start putting impediments on his sacrifices. So as King Prthu was performing his sacrifices, his kingdom was beginning to flourish. It is described in details how the whole kingdom has started to develop different varieties of opulence, and everyone was feeling happy. But when the situation reached where he has performed 99 sacrifice, he has performed already 99 sacrifices, and he was about to perform the 100th sacrifice, King Indra started taking the shape of different sannyasis. So he took the garb of a sannyasi and came to the spot, and he stole away the sacrificial horse. And then Sage Atri, he noticed that, and he brought to the attention of the son of Prthu. And then he said that here is Indra actually in the garb of a sannyasi. So you should kill him. So when the son of Prthu, he started chasing Indra, Indra got afraid, and then when he was about to shoot arrow, he immediately left his garb, left the horse, and disappeared from the scene. And then the son of Prthu, he brought back the horse, and then immediately after, again the sky was overcast with dark clouds, and Indra again started taking the garb of another sannyasi, and in this way he repeated this event many, many times, and taking the different robes and different decorations of so-called sannyasis, and he was just stealing the horse and trying to create an impediment on the fulfillment of the sacrifice of King Prthu. So every time like his son would try to kill him, he would disappear from the scene, and this was repeated many, many times. So now when that issue was brought to the attention of Prthu, and with the different priests, they decided that they are going to invoke certain mantras to invite Indra and actually kill him. And then at the time when they were about to start actually invoking the mantra to bring Indra to the spot, Lord Brahma appeared to the scene, and he said that let you be satisfied with only 99 sacrifices. And in fact, like what you are trying to do, this is quite abominable, because you are doing the sacrifice where the different demigods, they are supposed to take part in that. So how can you kill the king of the demigods, is Indra? So therefore, this is not appropriate. And particularly it was said that this is not your duty. So just by being satisfied with these 99 horse sacrifices, all good fortune will come, and everything that is necessary would be there. So Prthu Maharaj completely accepted that request, and he was just satisfied and happy with the 99 horse sacrifices. And with that, what he received is more blessings of all the Vaishnavas or Brahmanas, and he also became more famous than Indra. So the point that we can see from this episode is that if we can somehow or other be satisfied in the instructions of the superior, then within that satisfaction is a strong empowerment to go beyond the competitive spirit, which is this envious mentality. So here, as Srila Prabhupada was writing, that in the material world, everyone who comes to enjoy himself or lord it over material nature is envious of others. So enviousness is actually born out of this enjoyment attitude, a strong tendency to being a competitor of Krishna. So from an ultimate or absolute standpoint, there is nothing called injustice, because after all, on an absolute platform, everything is just either the loving hands of Krishna, or it's the justice of Krishna meted out through the karma of the specific individual. So in the purport of 29th verse of the 23rd chapter in the 4th canto, Prabhupada makes a very interesting statement. He says that in actuality, or in the ultimate issue, there is nothing like material world. But when the living entity, he gives up the service of Krishna and engages in the satisfaction of his own senses, then he is known to exist in the material world. So in other words, when the living entity, out of the rebellious spirit, tries to cultivate the strong tendency to enjoy the material world, then what comes about is different interactions with the matter, and then there is a perceived notion of injustice because of not having this big picture. So when we talk about injustice, it's actually a perceived injustice, because from Krishna's standpoint, it's either those who are inimical to Krishna, they are working under the material energy of Krishna, or those who are submissive to Krishna, they are working under the internal energy of Krishna. And therefore, they are always protected, and they are all the different varieties of situations, they are simply exhibitions of the Lord's mercy, His kindness to bring us closer to Him. So either the different situations and circumstances, they are coming as different opportunities to actually burn our sinful reactions. Like yesterday, as it was mentioned in Amritananda Prabhu's lecture, that the different living entities acting as an instrument of my own karma. Or for the case of pure devotees, the different events and different situations, they're simply different varieties of enactment of Krishna's mercy, as Subal Prabhu was mentioning. So in either case, there is nothing called injustice. Everything is, from Krishna's standpoint, everything is justice. So now, in my own life, I'd like to share, like a few years ago, when, simple thing like when I used to see different peer devotees, they would get more attention, or they would get more opportunity to interact with my spiritual master or my mentor, my heart would burn. And therefore, I would not be able to tolerate that internally. But then, over a period of time, with more purification, but particularly, what I noticed is that when there is increased satisfaction in the services that has been entrusted with me, the different varieties of responsibilities that I have received from my spiritual master, when I got that security within my heart, those feelings just automatically dissipated. At least I do not have those kinds of feelings right now. So I'm just expressing this because, not because I have earned this out of my own accord, anything, but I feel it's simply a product of the descending mercy. And it's just that inner security in the heart, like feeling that love of the disciplic succession, manifesting to the instructions and being satisfied within those instructions, that gives us an inner power to go beyond our limitations, where we start building these different competitive attitudes. So later on, when Lord Vishnu appears, when he becomes satisfied with the attitude of King Prthu, he makes a wonderful statement. He says that Yah swadharmena mam nityam nirashir shraddhya anvita bhajate, that whoever without having any material desires and having full faith, shraddhya anvita, he worships me nityam. And how does he worship him? Through his occupational activities, whatever prescribed activities that are coming down through the disciplic succession. So if he is engaging in that kind of worship, what happens? Bhajate shanakes tasya santu. It is expressed, let me just open that verse instead of. This is in the next chapter, in the 20th chapter. Okay, it's not there, but I remembered. Manorajan prasidati. What happens is that his mind becomes filled with satisfaction. That there is an inner satisfaction that is gifted to such an individual. But the root of that is somehow or other to remain connected with the instruction. Just like in the case of Prthu Maharaj, he just was happy when he received that instruction from Lord Brahma. He was happy just having completed 99 sacrifices. He was not trying to think that, no, I have to still endeavor and show that I can do it. Yes, he could complete that 100 sacrifice, but he was just satisfied in having received that instruction from Lord Brahma. So I would like to also quote from the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where the pinnacle point of like Krishna getting bound by Mother Yashoda's love that happens, it is expressed that that Swamatu Shirna Gatraya Visrasta Kabarasrija, that when Mother Yashoda was like just, her whole body was just filled with perspiration, and the different flowers on the hair, they were just fallen down. She was in a disheveled shape. Why? Because she was just trying to bind Krishna all throughout the day, trying to connect different ropes, and then she was not able to bind Krishna because Krishna was not allowing that to happen. And then it is said that so Visrista Kabarasrija Drishtava Parishramam Krishna Swamatu Kripaya Asit Sobandhane. So it is described that when Krishna saw that Parishram, so Drishtava Parishrama, so that's the endeavor on the part of Mother Yashoda. Drishtava Parishramam Krishna Kripaya Asit Sobandhane. Krishna discharged his Kripa Shakti. And then because of that Kripa Shakti, because of that mercy, Mother Yashoda was able to bind Krishna. So one of the inspirations that I get is that Krishna is all the time watching us. If we are able to somehow or other show our sincerity, then we would be receiving all kinds of empowerment to go beyond our limitations. So I'll just keep it there. Thank you all very much.
ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते रोमपादस्वामिन्निति नामिने। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिन्निति नामिने। वंशात्कल्पतरुभयश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। I selected a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto, chapter 17. Mother Parvati curses Chitraketu. Text 17. The verse is Chitraketur uvacha Pradigrihnami te shapam atmano anjalinambike devair martyaya yad proktam purvadishtam hi tasya tat. Pradigrihnami te shapam atmano anjalinambike devair martyaya yad proktam purvadishtam hi tasya tat. Translation. Chitraketu said, "My dear mother, with my own hands folded together, I accept the curse upon me. I do not mind the curse, for happiness and distress are given by demigods as a result of one's past deeds." So, Matnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri. So the context of this verse, I'm sure most of us are familiar. King Chitraketu, who is the king of the Vidyadharas, he was traveling through the air in his celestial airplane, and he see Lord Shiva seated in an assembly of sages and great devotees, with Mother Parvati sitting on his lap, and Lord Shiva was embracing her. And seeing this, Chitraketu, he laughed, but not with any intention of offending Lord Shiva or Parvati. And it is stated in this chapter that Lord Shiva did not get angry. He was in fact, he was smiling, whereas Parvati cursed Chitraketu to become a demon. And in his next life, he became Rudrasura. So, in that context, the way how Chitraketu received that curse, that is this particular verse. And the exercise that was given to us is to examine the content of this devotee's consciousness. So Chitraketu took this situation and he accepted it without any anger or counter cursing. He could have done that. He was a great devotee of the Lord, very powerful personality. He didn't do that. And he took it as a reaction to his misdeeds. And in one of the verses, which is following this one, he says, "Since all my happiness and distress are destined by my past activities, I do not plead to be excused or relieved from your curse." So that kind of tolerance towards others, it is really possible only when we tolerate our own sufferings, which actually many devotees spoke about that. We tolerate our sufferings as a reaction to our own misdeeds. One can tolerate only in that context. And Chitraketu was really humble, truly humble, and he was very meek. And he accepted this condition as Lord's mercy. And it really was Lord's mercy because later it's understood that the Lord wanted him to come go back to Godhead very quickly, and this was a method by which this was accomplished. And the word used in this verse, Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport, Daiva Netra. Even though I noticed that in the verse itself it is said Daiva, another different word is used in there. The superior authority or the agents of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that was Mother Parvati. So he knew he did not commit any offense against Lord Shiva or Parvati, but he was punished, and he took it as ordained by the Lord. And the humility and meekness exhibited by King Chitraketu, it really shows his exalted consciousness. And Prabhupada writes in the purport, such a devotee only becomes increasingly attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead because of his being purified by his sufferings. So in these adverse situations, this is the special quality exhibited by advanced devotees of the Lord throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, not only Chitraketu, but many other examples, Prahlad Maharaj or Queen Kunti or Ambariksha Maharaj. All these examples, they are, in these adverse situations, they are they come closer towards the Lord. And that shows their exalted nature. And the suffering that we see, it really is not suffering. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments about that. Prabhupada quoted it in this particular purport, that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that such devotees are not actually subjected to the sufferings and happiness under the law of karma. They are on the Brahma Buddha platform, and so the Lord wanted Chitraketu to come back as soon as possible, and it was facilitated through the heart of Goddess Parvati. And so later, actually when she cursed Chitraketu, the way he received this curse made her wonder about it. And Lord Shiva comments about that, the later part of this chapter, where Lord Shiva is glorifying the nature of the devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that made Goddess Parvati understand how was it possible for Chitraketu to receive this curse in this spirit. And also there are additional verses which Chitraketu speaks which reveals his own true quality as a devotee as well. And so by accepting the curse, Chitraketu becomes Vritrasura in the next life, and he accepted the suffering that came in his way, and by Lord's arrangement in all humility, and he attained the perfection of life. So the desire for retribution to any kind of a difficult situation, it is something which happens in to people who are in a materially conditioned state. It doesn't happen to those who are in the Brahma Buddha platform, which is the examples of all these devotees that we see in Srimad Bhagavatam, not only this particular case. So to live in this material world, for ordinary persons like us, practicing Krishna consciousness, it's not easy to be tolerant. So because of our material consciousness, depending upon the degree of hurt feelings, especially like cases where people are abused or tormented, it's not even the case of small offenses against each other, but when there is serious harm is done, there is always this feeling of wanting to have retribution. And so it is like whether it is a lower level of inconvenience or it's a higher level of torture, everybody, whoever lives in this world, we cannot escape some degree or other of disturbance. So to live in this material world, we do need some degree of tolerance. It may be some small offense we tolerate, or it is like a big offense that also may require tolerance. So the attempt to really practice this quality of tolerance on our part is actually, it's an attempt to attain the love of God. So that's what Krishna wants us to do, and so we have to do that. And the third part of this exercise is how do you strike a balance between justice and mercy. So there is this incident where Draupadi, Queen Draupadi, was her 5 sons were killed by Ashwatthama at the end of Mahabharata battle when they were sleeping, and Arjuna really brought Ashwatthama back to her to punish him, but both Draupadi as well as Yudhishthira Maharaj were very merciful. They didn't want to punish Ashwatthama, and Arjuna as well as Krishna, they wanted to punish him. And Srila Prabhupada writes about this, that Prabhupada writes, the feeling of equality was there because Draupadi spoke out of her personal experience. A barren woman cannot understand the grief of a mother. Draupadi was herself a mother, and therefore her calculation of the depth of Kripi's grief was to the point. So to simply avoid giving pain to Ashwatthama's mother, Kripi, she didn't want to punish Ashwatthama. So it would appear to be very wonderful that Draupadi was very compassionate. She didn't want to punish, but we would wonder, was justice done? And Prabhupada writes about that in the purport. Because of the compassionate nature of being a woman, without discriminatory power, Draupadi forgave his offense, even though he was not worthy to be called as a son of Brahmana. But the Supreme Lord Krishna condemned him. So Prabhupada is making the point that even though compassionate response is usually the best based on a Vaisnava quality of behavior, we cannot lose our discrimination. So being a woman, being more compassionate, if a woman is not capable of being discriminatory, somebody who in a higher authority who has the discriminatory power will have to step in and do something about it. And the decision whether to extend, the mercy, or deal justice, it has to be judged by a case-by-case basis. And in this case, Arjuna really shamed Ashwatthama, and later Krishna condemned him. But that's another way of looking at it. And again, coming back to the execution of our own devotional life, if we are too much absorbed in our own problems, that really does not help us to be compassionate with anyone. First of all, to extend this quality of compassion, we have to be compassionate, learn to become compassionate to ourselves, and then we can be compassionate to anyone else in our life. So compassion and forgiveness, that is a devotional quality. And so we can pray to attain those qualities, because bhakti is absolute, and the qualities such as compassion and forgiveness that a devotee may wish to extend to someone also is, it is not a material quality. And so to desire in attaining such a quality is not, it's not something different from our desire to attain the quality of pure devotional service. So we can pray for it. We can receive such a seed of compassion from our spiritual authorities, such as spiritual master or saintly devotees with whom we are interacting. We can receive that quality of compassion, the seed of compassion, but a seed cannot grow on a rocky soil. To make that seed to grow, we have to practice it. And that's where prayer comes into the picture. Because without practice, it is never going to happen. And so we can pray Krishna that, oh Krishna, please let me have this quality of forgiveness. It is you who determine my capacity for forgive, and please give me your mercy. That is doable. So then many devotees spoke about this, that the quality of compassion exhibited by Prahlad Maharaj and many other saintly devotees that we study in Srimad Bhagavatam, it is beyond us, because that is a different level of compassion. It's very deep. It quite surpasses the kind of compassion that we may feel towards our immediate family members or close associates. We are not on that platform. Even the great saintly Vaisnavas, elevated Vaisnavas, they don't claim to have that kind of a capacity to humility. Out of their own humility, they feel that they don't have that kind of a capacity. So, but one thing we can surely do is we can approach Krishna through prayers for the development of such qualities by regular practice. And Krishna does respond to our prayers. There is no question about it. And forgiveness does not happen in one step. It is an ongoing process, especially in cases where the hurt is really deep and somebody is seriously injured. It is not just like that, okay, I forgive you. Somebody stepped on your toe, you can say, yeah, that's fine. But there's a different degrees of hurt is there, so it does not happen. So in those cases, there is like a incessant prayer. And that's where it comes into the picture. And Queen Kunti prays, Tvaime ananya vishaya, matir madhupate sakrit, radim udvat hadat adha, gangeva ukhamudanyatim. Just as a river flows towards the lotus feet of Krishna. So the prayer has to be incessant, and in such cases, there is Krishna's reciprocation. And in 7th canto, when Prahlad Maharaj is praying to Lord Nrsimhadev, Lord Nrsimhadev says this one thing: since you are my devotee, if you pray for someone else, that prayer will also be fulfilled. So Krishna fulfills the devotee's prayer as well as others' prayers, which is like intercessionary prayer. Krishna does fulfill that. And prayer can be then seen as an act of compassion. So one last thing is regarding forgiveness. Forgiveness, it is like, it's a one-way thing. It's we who can forgive. We don't need two people to forgive, I forgive you. So it takes a burden off our shoulders, and it releases the other person from the blame. So that means leaving everything in the hands of God, and that has to come with complete faith, and that's where the real tricky part is. How much of a faith and how much of a exclusive dependence on Krishna we have. And then how do you get that? To get that exclusive dependence of Krishna would depend upon the quality of our own sadhana. If we don't have that, we cannot be exclusively dependent on Krishna. So then the other choice is not to forgive. So failure to forgive. So what does that takes us to? If we refuse to forgive, that will leave open wounds, and that can lead to bitterness, that can lead to frustration, resentment, depression, all kinds of things. So for a practicing devotee, that's not a good situation. So bitterness will damage our relationship among ourselves, and it will damage our relationship with Krishna as well. So it will misdirect our focus on to our own problems. It will not take us closer towards Krishna. It takes us, redirect it towards our own inward self. And so for our own good as well as the good of the person who has hurt us, we have to forgive. So we have to learn to do it in the Vaisnava way, through the media of complete faith and trust in Krishna, through incessant prayer. So wounds will be healed, and forgiveness, as I said, takes only one person, but it's not a one-time process, so it has to be an ongoing process, especially in cases where the hurt is really deep. And then the last thing is, living in this world, there is this reconciliation, but reconciliation takes two people, not one. That's done. Done. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurun militam yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So I picked a few less talking about pastimes from the 9th canto. The 9th canto somehow has a lot of meaning for me because I happened to read it at a time when I was very much trying to deal with some unjust hurt situation, and I was trying very hard but still struggling somewhat. And then I read the 9th canto, and the whole of 9th canto actually, it has many stories, many big stories, like Ambrish Maharaj and Ambrish Maharaj, Lord Ramachandra, King Yayati, and so on. And then there's many small stories. And there's a series of like curses and counter curses and so on. Another big part of the 9th canto is a description of dynasties. So Sukadeva Goswami is describing the dynasty of the sun and moon leading up to Krishna's appearance in 10th canto. And part of hearing this, this son, this king comes after this one, and this comes after this one, and this comes after this one, there's like, in 10 verses, you see something like 20 or 30 or sometimes more generations. And it really gives a certain perspective of time and the value of life. And you get a sense of how, there's some kings who have accomplished so much, and they've, created a whole dynasty in their name. And then there's some who got what they want, some who got what they want, but not the way they wanted, and some did not get what they want, and many like unjust situations. But still, life moves on. One king comes, his life is over, he's cleared away, and then his son comes, his children come, and they do something, don't do something, get something, don't get something, and then their life is cleared away, and then the next one. And it just goes on, and it goes at such a rapid rate. And at least the way it's described, Sukadeva Goswami doesn't spend a lot of time describing many of these kings, because seemingly at least, they did not perhaps do something very, very significant. But I'm sure they felt that their lives were actually quite significant. And we all feel also that our lives are very significant, and we become attached to our plans and desires, and things happen, things don't happen, and we hold on. And in the meantime, life is passing away, and death comes knocking on our door, and we can't tell the Yamadutas, that this unfair thing happened or that unfair thing happened, and therefore I couldn't fix my consciousness on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I hope there's time, but I thought of just quickly sharing like 3 stories, contrasting things, how one person took shelter and then what happened, and then another person didn't take shelter and what happened. So there is this King Prishadra described in the dynasty of Vaivashvata Manu. And King Prishadra, he was like a protector of the cows, and he would actually stand all night with a sword, just wanting to protect the cows. And one fine day, he was standing like that, and in the dark night, a tiger comes. And the tiger comes and it seizes one of the cows, and the cow is shrieking in pain. And in the dark, he tries to save this cow, and he uses a sword. And the sword, because he couldn't see well in the dark, it happens to cut off the head of the cow. And then it cuts a little bit part of the ear of the tiger, and the tiger flees. And then morning comes, and he realizes that, he killed a cow. And he's feeling very, very regretful. And yet Vasishtha Muni is a person that appears again and again in this canto because he lived a very long time. So Vasishtha Muni curses him, saying that you should become a Shudra. You're not going to get a Kshatriya life, next life. You should become a Shudra. And what does Prishadra do? His response to that seemingly unfair curse, he didn't do it willfully. So here's what he does. Thereafter, Prishadra gained relief from all responsibilities, became peaceful in mind, and established control over all his senses. Being unaffected by material conditions, being pleased with whatever was available by the grace of the Lord to maintain body and soul together, and being equal towards everyone, he gave full attention to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, who is the transcendental supersoul free from material contamination. Thus, Prashadra, fully satisfied in pure knowledge, always keeping his mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, achieved pure devotional service to the Lord and began traveling all over the world without affection for material activities, as if he were deaf, dumb, and blind. So he fixed himself in this manner, and he actually attains the Supreme Personality of Godhead and goes back to Godhead in that end of his life. And he was cursed to become a Shudra. But by taking shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is our only shelter, he could transcend this curse, this seeming injustice. Then there's another example of King Nabhaga. I chose that because sometimes we also encounter situations in our life where we feel, okay, if something was not committed, then and something happens, it's easier to let go. But then sometimes somebody makes a commitment and they don't keep that commitment and they don't talk about it. And it's very hard to let go, because I find that in my life sometimes, that when somebody gives word and they don't keep their word and they don't talk about it ever, I struggle with trying to let go. And so this is a very short pastime. So King Nabhaga, he had two brothers, and King Nabhaga went away for a long time to perform austerities and stuff. And so the two brothers, they thought, okay, he's not going to come back. So they take all the property of their father and they divide it amongst themselves. And they think, okay, if and when Nabhaga comes back, we'll give our father as his, his heir. So one fine day, Nabhaga comes back, and then he realizes what his brothers did. And then they tell him that this is your, property, your father. So he goes to his father and says, well, this is what they said. You're my property. And the father says, well, don't listen to those cheating words, because I'm not your property. Then he says that the descendants of Angira, they are, Angira and associates, they're performing a sacrifice. And you can go there to the place where they're performing this sacrifice. And at the end of sacrifice, there'll be some remnants. And just before they're going to heavenly planets, you can request for those remnants. They'll give them to you. And so he goes, he stays at the sacrifice, and then he asks for the remnants, and they give him the remnants. And just as he's accepting the remnants, then a black-faced person comes, and he says, these remnants belong to me. And so then he says, well, no, my father said this, and I'm just accepting them. How do they belong to you? Because these saintly personalities gave them to me, gave the remnants to me. So then this black-faced person says, let's go to your father and settle this matter. And so they go to the father, and the father says, well, the whole sacrifice was actually performed for Lord Shiva, so naturally he should get everything. and it seems like just before that he said something, and now he's saying something else. It belongs to him. So, you should just give it to him. And Nabhaga, he just offers obeisances to Lord Shiva, and he just gives everything. Nothing, no fight, no resentment, nothing. Just with all his respect, he offers obeisances. Then there's another story. There's the King Saudash. Saudash is a very interesting story. So King Saudash, he was cursed by Vashishta Muni to become a man-eater, and Maharaj Parikshit asked, how come he was cursed like this? So it describes the story. So one time, he goes to the forest and he kills a Rakshasa. And he kills one Rakshasa, but he spares the brother of this Rakshasa. So this brother of the Rakshasa then wants to take revenge. And the brother goes to the king's palace and he becomes a cook. And one day Vasishta Muni, who's a spiritual master of Saudash, comes, and then this brother of the Rakshasa cooks for Vasishta, and he serves human flesh to Vasishta Muni. And Vasishta Muni, as soon as he sees this, he becomes aware that this is human flesh. This is not prasadam, and he curses the king right away, saying that you will become a man-eater. And then later he realizes that the king actually did not do it, and he goes through some penance for like a period of 12 years. But in the meantime, then Saudash, he actually starts chanting a Shapa mantra to curse Vasishta Muni back. And then his wife stops him. And then, anyway, so he stops. He doesn't count a curse. He accepts the curse. So then one day he goes to a forest and he sees a Brahmana couple, having a sexual intercourse. And Saudash was overcome by this propensity of the Rakshasa, eating man. And he seizes the Brahmana. And the woman cries very, very piteously. She says so many things. She says, you are, the descendant of Ikshvaku, and you should not be doing something irreligious like this. And he's a Brahmana. He really wants to eagerly fix his consciousness on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so you should leave him. And she says, I'm going to get a child. Don't stop him. I cannot live without him for a moment. And you're a Brahmana, you're learned, and you're a learned person, and this Brahmana is very saintly and sinless. Please leave him. But yet, Saudash doesn't get moved even one bit with all the pleas. And his propensity overtakes him, and he devours the Brahmana just like a tiger, it's described. And very unfair, it seems. Is it his fault that he devoured the Brahmana? It's not his fault. It was because of the curse. And what was the fault of the Brahmana couple? Just going along, and this person comes and swallows up her husband. Very unfair. So anyway, so that's done, and then after a period of 12 years, this curse is finished, and then he wants to have a child, and his wife reminds him that of this curse. Then that woman actually curses the Brahmana, saying, "Oh, you will actually die also when you try to beget a child." So cursing, counter-cursing, and so later Saudash wants to have a child, and the wife reminds him that you can't do it because you have this curse. So then he accepts that he will be sonless, and then he fixes his mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead at the end. It's not described too much. So anyways, so you see these contrasting stories of how one person fixed their consciousness when something seemingly injustice happened, and one did not, and then what was the result? And one person did it as soon as something happened, one person did it after experiencing, going through life at the end of their life, and then suffering as a result of that. So our life is also actually full of such occurrences. There's a tendency for our life to really overwhelm us at times. We're just going along the path, and with all sincerity, with as much integrity as possible, we're trying to serve, and then something happens, something unjust happens, and you never know what's kind of waiting around the corner just when you feel like you've dealt with one thing and come to some peace with it, and then there's something, and then there's something, and there's something. So we also tend to feel that we are unjustly dealt with. And destiny, karma, is also very strong. One may try to change it on the material platform, but it actually doesn't work for very long. It catches up on you. And the only way really then is to take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there's also the story of Maharaj Ambarish in this section. I'm not going to go into the story, but because everyone knows the story. And what was his consciousness? His consciousness was, his shelter was in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there's just two verses at the end of that pastime. After Durvasha Muni is rescued and so on. So Durvasha Muni says, "My dear king, today I have experienced the greatness of devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For although I have committed an offense, you have prayed for my good fortune. For those who have achieved the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master of the pure devotees, what is impossible to do? And what is impossible to give up? What is impossible for the servants of the Lord? By the very hearing of His holy name, one is purified. O King, overlooking my offenses, you have saved my life. Thus I'm very much obliged to you because you're so merciful." So the specific character of a devotee is that he's fearless because he has an absolute sense of shelter. And he's living with the feeling of Gotriptve Varanam, that the Lord is my maintainer, He's taking care of me, He's my protector. So then naturally, whatever happens in his life, he's only feeling this cannot happen without the sanction of the Lord. So he sees the sanction of the Lord in all things. And what is the consciousness actually of such a person? It's very, very deep. It's not something superficial because it cannot be done when it's superficial. There's a very deep sense of shelter in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And therefore, there is no resentment, and actually he feels that there's nothing to forgive for. Like Jai Jagannath Prabhu was also speaking yesterday. He was actually surprised. Okay, is there something to forgive for Maharaj Ambarish? So there's nothing impossible. So our just want to conclude with just saying that our life, our true life, or who we are really is in serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And actually nothing short of that satisfies the soul. And as long as we're trying to satisfy things on another platform and find answers on another platform other than the platform of service, then it's always going to be on with material conceptions, as others have spoken to. And we will always find unjust situations in our life. But by such shelter and service, then one can transcend beyond everything, not only for our own self, but then we can become instruments of compassion and extend that to others' lives. Because really, even why does somebody do something very mean is because they're actually suffering. That's the cause. It's not directed at us, but they're suffering actually. So I'll just end with that and open up for discussion.
When somebody do something wrong, does that mean they are suffering?
Does that?
If someone do something wrong to someone else, does that mean they're suffering?
It depends. They may experience suffering depending on their consciousness. Are you asking about the person who is on the receiving end, or? Yeah.
You can understand that place where that's coming from.
Oh.
Is their own
Suffering.
Suffering.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's true. They're suffering because they're not feeling shelter. They're looking for something outside other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They're not satisfied within. And so by enacting this, whatever act, the mean act or harsh act, they're trying to find shelter through that. But the real thing is that they're very dissatisfied inside. They don't have shelter.
Some people feel like if they do something to someone, they feel powerful about doing things like that.
Sure, so they're taking shelter of that sense of power. But
so that is a part of suffering also?
But it's illusory. That sense of power is illusory. We don't have any power.
This question can be open to anyone. These messages that we hear are not unfamiliar to us as devotees. Even if you've been a devotee for 1 year, these messages are very familiar and repeated again and again and again and again. And yet we see that when these occurrences take place in our life, as they inevitably do, that our vision of them is practically from ground zero, as if we've never heard these messages before. And then sometimes, at least I have experience of this, trying to see it according to not the naked eye, but according to what I've heard. But then I experience a weakness of heart, the yeah but type of situation. So what is the deficiency in me that although I've heard these messages repeatedly, my vision ultimately does not change? It's as if I've never heard it at all. And that's a really rare phenomenon.
Okay, I'll answer. One thing, to take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead it's not as easy. Like the verse in Bhagavad Gita, how does that start? Dvandva moha nirmukta bhajante mam dridhavritaha. How does it start? Tesham no. What? Yeah. Yeah. So as long as there is envy within the heart, you actually cannot take shelter of such a person. And we experience that in our relationships, that when there is envy, then it's difficult to take shelter. And to take shelter, actually, one needs to build up some bhakti sukruti. The bhakti sukruti has to reach a certain point for us to spontaneously take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we can understand that I'm not at that point, at least that's the way I process it. I'm not at that place, and therefore my mind doesn't spontaneously go there. Like Narad Muni, he was just a 5-year-old child, but when his mother was taken away, he just took shelter. He just traveled in the direction of Narada and he took shelter. But it's not possible so easily to take shelter because there is the envy, there's the anarthas, there is not enough bhakti sukruti. So sometimes there's descriptions we hear of how real bhakti, I mean, it's just one way of looking at it. Real bhakti actually begins, at the stage of bhava or something like that. There's descriptions like that. Because that is when one is spontaneously taking this kind of shelter and they have this relationship. And until then, it's like a cultivation. It's a cultivation, so it doesn't spontaneously go there. So then there is our sadhana bhakti. Every day we follow the program given by Srila Prabhupada, and we sharpen our spiritual intelligence so that then our heart can be directed, something that you were speaking, head and heart. So at our level, then it's the head, which meaning not just our mundane intelligence, but the spiritual intelligence which needs to be sharpened through the process of our chanting and hearing. And then our sukriti keeps building up, and then we are able to take shelter. And we see that shift in our life also of, in the beginning, it's like days and months when something happens, and then it's weeks, and then maybe it's a day, and then it's, hours and hopefully minutes, and then
First of all, I want to thank yesterday's and today's speakers for nicely churning this topic. We've been reading, as part of the meeting, a paper by Ravindra Swarup Prabhu. And something that has stuck with me very much is that sentence that we've been reading again and again, that I'm paraphrasing, that in relationships, the two major impediments are sense gratification and false ego. So to Jai Jagannath Prabhu's question, it seems that the false ego is operating to such a degree that the sense of who we are in that situation, in any situation, sort of decides or influences what we feel from it. So this sense, yesterday you brought up the dharma, the bull situation, where we've heard that dharma is saying, the bull is saying, I don't want to fall into this whole victim consciousness. Because the moment I think of myself as a victim and someone else as a perpetrator, then I am carrying the same or similar suffering that as you were saying, Mataji, that the perpetrator is suffering. So the victim is also suffering. So we often go into situations, at least from yesterday's letter, I've been thinking about this all evening, and that we go into situations, or situations come to us, either way, unprepared. And it's in that unprepared moment that the conditioned state takes over. It's a false ego situation. Whereas in the lives of these great personalities, both from history and current, because they are prepared, they have a sense of anything can happen any moment, and I'm a servant of Krishna. So I really appreciate your point that the sadhana bhakti every day is our preparation for anything untoward that can manifest. I'm a servant of Krishna. And like you say, it's not easy. So I wanted to share from yesterday's paper.
I think we have.